This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Riley Laychuk. Janet is off tonight. A Winnipeg football coach accused in multiple cases of sexual abuse is facing more charges tonight. And they're taking action on a new strategy to better protect kids this school year. CBC's Andrew Wilds reports.
On Wednesday, Winnipeg High School football coach Kelsey McKay was rearrested and charged with 2 new offences.
The sex crime unit was contacted by another former student who reported being exploited and sexually assaulted as a teen by the same high school coach during the 2000s.
This makes a total of 9 former students who have now come forward since April. McKay used to teach and coach at Vincent Massey Collegiate and Churchill High School in Winnipeg. He's now facing 24 charges related to sexual assault and sexual exploitation of former students. The Pembina Trail School Division says McKay is still on administrative leave. Police say McKay's case is just one of the reasons they are launching a new public education initiative about red flags in the student-coach relationship. As schools restart, police say they want to reach students, coaches, and parents about the warning signs of grooming.
Having material on our webpage is not nearly enough. We want to open ourselves up to presentations in a live format where we can speak to either of these 3 groups.
Police say they don't want to cause an alarm about the majority of coaches, but there are signs that should never be ignored.
You know, I've heard that comment many times before where people have said, I thought there was something wrong. And so I would say this, I would say follow your instincts and trust what you believe you're seeing and ask the question.
The coaches all know the rules. They've all taken the certifications and they know what's acceptable and what is not acceptable.
The initiative is called Sexual Exploitation and Abuse in Sports, but police say the presentations won't be limited to sports teams. They say anyone interested in booking a presentation about what red flags in the grooming process looks like may do so. Andrew Wilds, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A Manitoba mother with postpartum depression says she was dismissed by an emergency room physician last month when she sought help after having suicidal thoughts. Instead, she left the hospital feeling ashamed and judged. CBC's Holly Carrick has her story and a warning some of the details in this story might be upsetting to some.
Delcy Martin has a 6-month-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. She's experiencing postpartum depression for the 2nd time. She went to the Neepawa Health Center after having persistent thoughts of dying, but the doctor dismissed her concerns.
He gestured to my husband and he said, "Look at this wonderful man sitting here and your 2 children at home. You have no reason to be depressed."
The 34-year-old says she was getting treatment in her home community in the Interlake, but she reached a breaking point while visiting Neepawa.
Suddenly, thoughts of dying that I was able to logically talk myself out of were becoming a lot more logical.
Martin says she told the doctor about other stressors in her life, finances, childcare, and schooling. She says the doctor told her not to have any more children.
Then he referred us to some sort of a financial planner that's out of the States and said that if I get financial planning, if I don't have babies, I'll be fine.
Martin filed a complaint with Prairie Mountain Health. A spokesperson said the health authority can't speak about a specific case, but that its patient relations department had been contacted. A group that advocates for mental health care surrounding pregnancy says experiences like Martin's happen far too often.
We hear from people across Canada about when they do reach out for help, how difficult that is.
The organization is calling for a national perinatal mental health strategy and says gaps in the system put the onus on people in crisis to find help.
This is just unethical. In other places around the world, they have screening programs, they have perinatal mental health specialist teams, they have mother-baby psychiatric units in case a woman requires an inpatient stay.
Martin stressed she doesn't want her experience to discourage others from seeking help. She says she's getting excellent care in her home community, but wants to draw awareness about the importance of mental health training for medical professionals. Holly Carrick, CBC News, Winnipeg.
If you or someone you know is struggling, there are places you can get help. For information and a list of resources, you can contact the Postpartum Depression Association of Manitoba. If you are in crisis and need immediate help, you can call the Clinic Community Health Centre crisis line at 204-786-8686 or the Manitoba Suicide Line at 1-877-435-7170. To Winnipeg's mayoral race now, there are 15 people running for the city's top elected position, and 4 of them made promises today. To break it all down, CBC's Bartley Kivas joins us live in the newsroom now. First, Bartley, what did we hear today?
Glenn Murray was talking transit today, Riley. He made promises that would cost billions of dollars to fulfill. The former mayor, who wants his old job back, promised to fully electrify Winnipeg Transit's bus fleet by 2030. That means buying 573 electric buses on top of the 100 the city is already ordering. This would cost billions in new buses and charging infrastructure, but Murray says it'll be cheaper in the long run than maintaining diesel buses and electric buses all at the same time.
The quicker we can get to a single technology platform, the much less expensive and much less difficult it will be to manage our systems.
Now, Murray also promised to speed up bus service along 13 transit routes. That would cost $36 million a year. He also said he'd build out everything in the city's transit master plan by 2030, and that would cost around $1 billion.
Scott Gillingham made expensive promises of his own today, Bartley. What did he pledge?
The St. James councillor says if he's elected mayor, he'd move forward on plans to extend Chief Peguis Trail to the west and widen Kenaston Boulevard. These promises may cost $1 billion together, and the city has very little money of its own for infrastructure and not much borrowing room left either. Gillingham says the city can't afford to stand back.
We won't escape the economic shadow by holding back investment in our city's competitiveness. I believe we must invest.
That's 2 candidates, Bartley. What did the others say today?
Jenny Mockluck wants to offer homeowners rebates to offset any property tax increases that may result from improvements to their homes.
I'm mayor of Winnipeg. I'm encouraging you, build the deck, add the garage, and finish the basement. Because as mayor, I will restore the incentive for homeowners to invest in their homes.
Now, provincial legislation requires the city to base property taxes on assessed values, but Mockluck could do this, in theory, because rebates are allowed. Now, we also heard today from former Liberal leader Rana Bakari. She wants to test Winnipeg water for asbestos. We have 6 more weeks of promises, Riley. The election's on October 26th.
Thanks, Bartley. I'm sure it's going to be a busy 6 weeks. CBC's Bartley Kivas in our newsroom tonight. Well, if marriages are made in heaven, Gimli must be very close to it. At least that is how a young Ukrainian couple must feel after fleeing from a war to safety, because the community that offered them refuge didn't stop there. Austin Grabish has the story.
Okay, look here, Daria. Good.
It is a picture-perfect afternoon.
Everything is good because we're feeling safe.
A young couple in love. New friends celebrating.
Are you okay there?
Taking in the view together.
It's just amazing. From first day when we come here, we're feeling like we are in this super big family.
But it wasn't that long ago that Daria and Anton Intuk were navigating choppy waters. The couple fled Kyiv earlier this year after Russia started bombing the capital city of Ukraine.
Nobody's safe in Ukraine now because you don't know what Russians doing.
They escaped to Paris in April, Anton not wasting any time.
I have one question, yes or not? She said, what? I say, you be my wife? She say, yeah.
Yeah.
The couple eventually arriving in Winnipeg in May. Desperate for workers, the Gimli Chamber of Commerce invited a bus full of Ukrainian newcomers to its community.
When you give these people a chance, they will more than earn your trust, faith, confidence, respect.
The couple was sold.
Here is like super cozy place.
Kevin Chudd hired the couple to work at his business. When he learned they wanted to get married, he sprung into action, helping organize their wedding.
Good.
Photographer Anders Koselka charging nothing for his time. The wedding cake, invitations, hotel space, flowers, all donated by local Gimli businesses.
Oh, it makes you proud to live in Gimli.
Kindness making for an unforgettable day against a perfect backdrop.
How do you feel?
I'm trying to not cry because now I have a beautiful husband for all of my life.
Austin Grabish, CBC News, Gimli, Manitoba.
350 people at Skip the Dishes in Winnipeg have lost their jobs. Parent company Just Eat Takeaway confirms that they were laid off last week. It says following a comprehensive review of its workforce, it laid off the 350 contact center employees. They were based in Winnipeg and supported the company's global markets. A company spokesperson says there will be no impact on day-to-day operations. Well, a monument that celebrates the diversity and mosaic of religions in Brandon has been refurbished and refreshed. The Labyrinth of Peace at the Brandon Riverbank Discovery Centre is designed to capture a snapshot of religious life on the prairies. CBC's Brandon reporter Chelsea Kemp gives us a look.
We are at the Brandon Riverbank Discovery Centre lands. This is the Labyrinth of Peace. More than 20 years ago in August, we dedicated this. It's to encourage people to think about religious tolerance, religio-cultural tolerance, and peace. Racism is never static. It's an ongoing endeavor, right? We can't say, oh, we've done our anti-racism work. Monuments like this matter because they bring people together. This was a collaborative project. It was a representation of religious diversity, and we talked to the different communities to see how they would like themselves represented. What was their symbol for peace in their religion or culture? And so we talked to all the communities, including Indigenous communities, and said, we'll give you one stone. And all of these communities go back more than 100 years in the region. Everyone in the community can come down, and maybe they haven't been here for a while, and walk around the stones and just look at these great symbols of peace.
Well, it's an asset that's been in the community for 20 years, but over the last several years it's been sort of forgotten about and neglected. It is a nice place of reflection. It is a destination for people to come and learn and appreciate others' beliefs. Both are reflective places. Both are about peace and living in harmony with your fellow human being. Come out and have a look and reflect on how diverse Brandon is. They'll be pleased with the restoration, and I hope that they'll recognize the fact that it's important for us to respect people with different views.
All right, time to check in with meteorologist John Sauder, and I think you called it a feels like July type of day today. 30 degrees?
Yeah, 30 degrees,
wow.
Just over 30 in Winnipeg. Here's the thing, if you're just about to head out the door and take the kids to soccer or baseball, be prepared because our temperature is really going to drop quickly in the next couple of hours, and winds will be out of the north. So yeah, have a jacket, a sweater, that sort of thing. Let's get to the current conditions. And speaking of a falling temperature, 29 last hour, now 25. Now we're not seeing a gust, at least right at the top of the hour at the airport, now north at 20, but we've seen gusts up to about 40 kilometers per hour, and I do think the wind will kind of pick up through the evening and then settle down after midnight. But yeah, dew point, a pretty comfortable 11. Temperature right now at 25 degrees. Number of 30-degree days. Well, we did hit 30.1 in Winnipeg this year. That's the 7th day over 30 this year. Now, to put that into perspective, last year we had 35 days in the entire season of 30-plus weather, and the hot spot in Manitoba today was Carmen at 31.1. So, yes, I wouldn't be surprised if a few records were falling across southern Manitoba, not even close here in the Winnipeg area. Not much cloud around. We saw some high, thin cloud cover, kind of a filtered sunshine at times, but this clear sky is really going to let these temperatures drop tonight. And yes, we have a frost advisory in effect for the Swan River area, also off onto the Saskatchewan side of the border. And this is where temperatures tonight will be a little closer to zero than you would like if you still have tomatoes in the garden, flowers outside, that sort of thing. So prepare for that. I think a risk of frost we could even talk about around Dauphin and down through Wasagaming, anywhere around the Clear Lake area, on and all. Be prepared for a very chilly temperature by just before sunrise tomorrow. Now on Futurecast, couple of changes on the way. Tomorrow's a sunny day here in the south. This is Tuesday at 4:30. We're just starting to see that cloud kind of drift in, and we'll see more of a sun-cloud mix across the northeast. Then on Wednesday, we get some showers moving into the north and central regions. Then watch what happens after we get into Wednesday, just after midnight. A good deluge of rain along a low pressure system that is moving our way for Thursday. By the time we get to early Thursday morning, when the kids are heading out the door to go to school, it just turns into showers and more of a northeast wind. And I think Thursday and Friday will be the showery days and the cooler days of the week. Even tomorrow, quite a bit cooler with the upper trough kind of moving into the eastern prairies, and it hangs around eastern Canada with Winnipeg just on the dividing line of that cooler weather over the coming days. So 18s the next couple of days. This forecast model has us around 15 and 16 on Thursday, then recovering into the low 20s by the time we get to the weekend. So 7 degrees tonight. Amazing, the last couple of days have been so warm and sunny, but the mornings are really, really cool. Same thing tomorrow, not quite as warm in the afternoon, closer to seasonal actually. Northeast at 20, the winds, and lots of sunshine in the afternoon. And then as we go forward, we're at 20 on Wednesday. I have us with a pair of 17s on Thursday and showers both days, but there is a slight warm up for the weekend. I'll show you that a little later.
The weather update is brought to you by Home Equip, your trusted local source for Pride Mobility scooters. From sales to rental and repair, our team is here to serve you.
The new Conservative leader says Canadians are hurting, and he is the one to fix that. Pierre Poilievre met with Conservative MPs and senators today, his first caucus meeting since winning the top job with a large majority this weekend. We'll break down the win with a Manitoba political scientist just ahead. But first, as Catherine Cullen reports, while it was all smiles, there are questions about internal tensions.
He may be trying to show off a softer side, kicking off his first caucus meeting with a celebration for his son. But make no mistake, Pierre Poilievre's attack dog style is still there.
Canadians are out of money, and this Prime Minister is out of touch.
Though the Liberals are ready to attack right back.
Of a leader who advocated a series of policies and a series of ideas in the run-up to winning the leadership that are pretty irresponsible and pretty reckless. So,
like what?
Well, firing the governor of the Bank of Canada, telling people that you can sort of be insulated from inflation if you invest in cryptocurrency.
Poilievre is trying to stay focused on Canadians' economic woes, blaming the Prime Minister.
If you really care, commit today that there will be no new tax increases on workers and on seniors. None.
But the Conservatives also have to look inwards. The leadership race was divisive.
The average trucker has more integrity in his pinky finger than you had in your entire scandal-plagued Liberal cabinet.
But the end was decisive. With a stunning win of 68%, a clear result that might bring some on side.
We're not as divided as people would maybe have us, think.
Including this British Columbia MP and former cabinet minister.
Can you guarantee that you're sticking around?
Absolutely, I'm sticking around. I'm a Conservative, and I'm asking all Conservatives now to unite behind our new leader.
But asked if he'd start advocating for some of Poilievre's more contentious positions, ones he previously opposed, Ed Fast said no, meaning unity could still prove complicated. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Ottawa.
For more, I want to bring on Christopher Adams. He's an adjunct professor of political studies at the University of Manitoba. Thanks for coming on the show, Chris. I want to get right into it. Sure. This result that we saw on Saturday, is this at all surprising to you?
No, it wasn't. It was a long leadership campaign, and we got to see a lot of Pierre Poilievre. We saw very large crowds supporting him countrywide, and we saw huge numbers of memberships signed up, as well as the financial contributions to his campaign far outweighed all the other opposition combined. So it was not a surprise to me.
Why do you think he attracted such broad appeal from party members nationwide?
Well, I think he reflects the times, the fact of the Conservative Party is looking for somebody who can lead them into the next election. Poilievre is quite articulate. He is seen as more right of center than previous leaders that we've seen in the party in the past while, but he's very much part of the Conservative Party, that's the Reform Party alliance side of that party, more than the old Progressive Conservative side. So we did see Stephen Harper supporting him officially during the leadership campaign. So I think he's really a leader that's suited to the party at this time in 2022.
Now, the results of this were very decisive as it is, but how does he now pull in the more moderate Conservatives or the more centrist Conservatives, if you will?
Well, looking at Manitoba, we saw that pretty well every riding went for Poilievre. Also, Leslyn Lewis came in second place ahead of Jean Charest in pretty well all the ridings except up in Charleswood and in Winnipeg South Centre. So in many ways, Poilievre represents kind of like the more right side of things, and Leslyn Lewis also represents part of the Manitoba Party spectrum here. So it's really a new era for the Conservative Party of Canada.
I want to touch on that a bit. The tone of his speech on Saturday, in some respects, very different than the tone, very different than some of the language he was using from campaign. But what I thought was interesting was what he left out of that speech on Saturday. Things like, firing the Bank of Canada governor, the language around the World Economic Forum. Why do you think he left some of these key campaign pillars out when he was addressing party members on Saturday?
Well, he no longer has to appeal to the base of the party. He's now in pre-election mode. That election speech I saw, and in many ways he's talking about affordability, the cost of housing, energy development, lower taxes. He's really going after the Trudeau Liberals on the campaign speeches on affordability. So he really is moving away from having to attract party supporters to really having to attract swing voters and people who might otherwise vote the NDP and the Liberals. So we are going to see him moving more to the center, but I don't think the Liberals will allow him to do too much of that, because when we get into an election campaign, either later this fall or in the next couple of years, we will see advertisements on television that will be highlighting what he said during this leadership campaign.
As you were mentioning earlier, clearly he enjoys very broad support here on the prairies, but where does he go from here? What does he need to do in order to unite the party again?
Well, I don't think there's a problem of uniting the party. He's got much of his federal caucus behind him. He's been elected with over 60% of the vote, mid-60s. So clearly the party is behind him. So it's not so much uniting the party. I think making sure that the electorate is comfortable with him on the issues that he's going to raise. The things like cryptocurrency, firing the governor of the Bank of Canada, defunding CBC, some of those might be popular within the party, but it's not so much trying to unite the party, it's more trying to make himself look more prime ministerial going forward. And that was Stephen Harper's issue. Harper had other issues different than Poilievre in terms of public image, but Harper did have to make himself look more prime ministerial as he went towards successful elections.
Chris Adams is an adjunct professor of political studies at the University of Manitoba. Always great to have you on the program. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Riley. Take care.
As we head to break, don't forget to subscribe to our CBC Manitoba YouTube page. That's where you can find the latest headlines. We're also posting our full newscasts there, so you can catch up and stay connected anytime. We'll have much more ahead. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Well, 1 week after the stabbing massacre in Saskatchewan, the grieving is a long way from over, and people in various parts of Canada are paying respects in whatever way they can. We get the story from CBC's Sam Sampson.
Her smiling face. That's what Bonnie Burns' brother will remember, but at her wake, he and his family won't see her face at all.
They'll have closed caskets because of the situation, so it's unfortunate, but you know what? We have a lot of pictures. We're going to have a lot of family. We're going to sit there. We're going to laugh. We're going to tell some stories. We're going to eat some food. And that's going to bring us closer together.
The chief of the Saskatoon Tribal Council also lost his nephew, Gregory Burns. They were killed in a stabbing massacre that started on James Smith Cree Nation, where 9 people were killed, and continued to the nearby village of Weldon, where 1 man was killed. Now, families and communities are planning funeral after funeral.
It's going to be a tough couple of days here, but we're going to do our best to get through it.
1 week since, and the tragedy is being marked elsewhere. In Hamilton, Ontario, a sacred fire burns to remember those lost.
We celebrate together and we cry together. We mourn together. So by lighting our sacred fires, we are showing our relatives to the West that we are mourning with them, and we share their pain, and that we are here for them should they call upon us.
Another community rocked by tragedy. Families of the Humboldt Broncos hockey players killed more than 4 years ago are calling on all Canadians to show support.
Does have a passing touchdown this season. This time he's going to take it right up the middle, and he's in!
A symbol of solidarity in the CFL this weekend, as players sported stickers in support of James Smith Cree Nation.
I'll be praying for those families that lost a loved one and who are going through it, those that got wounded.
Funerals for those killed in James Smith and Weldon continue all week. Small steps in grieving such significant loss. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Regina.
Well, I want to bring you some details on a developing story near Toronto now. CBC News has learned 2 people, including a Toronto police officer, are dead in separate shootings in the Mississauga area. Peel Regional Police issued an emergency alert this afternoon saying they were investigating an active shooter believed to be armed and dangerous driving a stolen vehicle. A suspect has been arrested. 3 others were injured in the shootings. Scotland is the focus of Britain's 10 days of national mourning today. Queen Elizabeth's casket will remain there until it is flown to London tomorrow. But even as thousands of her Scottish subjects show up to pay their final respects in Edinburgh, support for the monarchy itself remains uncertain. Chris Brown reports.
This was Scotland's day to showcase its appreciation and affection for the Queen. Members of the Royal Regiment of Scotland placed her casket in the hearse for a procession along Edinburgh's Royal Mile.
All of this celebration of her happened because she died in Scotland, and I think that would have made her very happy.
Together publicly for the first time since her death, the Queen's 4 children followed behind. Prince Edward on the right, Prince Andrew, Princess Anne, and King Charles. At St. Giles's Cathedral, pallbearers moved the casket inside, where the crown of Scotland, crafted almost 500 years ago, was placed atop.
To our late monarch, whose love for Scotland was legendary.
The minister celebrated a life of service and dedication.
Scotland is a place that Charles, as Prince of Wales, came often. To come here now as king is significant for many in this crowd.
Polls suggest that while most Scots support the monarchy, enthusiasm is lower than in England. So one of King Charles's key tasks will be to keep a high profile, says this expert.
Everybody in Scotland is a kind of nationalist with a small n, and they'd easily be provoked by any signs of disrespect for Scotland or not taking Scotland seriously, even Unionists. So the monarchy has to be sure they don't put a foot wrong here.
Outside, the sense was the new king's reign is beginning well.
I think it's a unifying event. I think it's very important that we are a union, and it has been proved that today, the turnout.
King Charles also visited Scottish Parliament, where independence parties dominate. The UK government has rejected calls for another referendum on the topic. The King will have to navigate that challenge too.
I take up my new duties with thankfulness for all that Scotland has given me.
Later, the 4 royals returned to St. Giles for a vigil to publicly honour their mother and join with Scots in saying farewell. Chris Brown, CBC News, Edinburgh.
Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky also paid tribute to the Queen today.
Welcome to the British residence.
The Ukrainian president was at the residence of the UK ambassador. He, along with other members of his staff, signed a book of condolence. Zelensky had called the British monarch's death on Thursday an irreparable loss. Ukrainian forces claim they have clawed back more territory from Russian-occupied south and northeast, but interior parts of Ukraine remain in Russia's crosshairs. At least one civilian was killed and 4 others wounded in a missile strike in Kharkiv. Local authorities say multiple Russian strikes hit the city's critical infrastructure. Power cuts forced underground trains to ground to a halt. In a town about an hour south of Kharkiv city, there are abandoned military vehicles amid the ruins. Moscow says it pulled its forces from the region in order to regroup. Russia's invasion of Ukraine crossed the 200-day mark on Sunday. Still ahead, John Sauder is back with his look at the Manitoba forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Smoky skies and air quality alerts cover much of British Columbia and parts of Alberta.
Yeah, hundreds of British Columbians were actually ordered to leave their homes this weekend as wildfires continue to rage on. Georgie Smythe has more from Vancouver.
There's a grey, smoky filter on Vancouver this weekend. Air visibility and quality is low. The smoke here is from a number of fires burning across BC, including a fire yesterday at a wood recycling facility in the city and wildfires burning southeast of Chilliwack and Hope. Winds have also carried wildfire smoke from fires burning in Washington and Oregon. The impacts of those fires are being felt in Alberta as well, with special air quality statements in effect for much of that province too. Air quality advisories tell people to avoid or postpone exercise until the smoke clears. Despite the conditions in Vancouver, people are still getting outside.
We've been out maybe half hour, 40 minutes, I think, for a walk, and I notice it mainly in my sinuses, my breathing.
And I'm keeping all of my windows closed and fans going, but I think that after a little while it's almost a bit fatiguing and just eyes burning and getting tired, and you don't really want to be outside.
You've decided to go for a walk today. How are you finding the smoke?
It's incredible. I can't believe that this is happening again. Like every year it seems to get worse and worse.
Exposure to these high concentrations of fine particulate matter can be harmful to people with underlying health conditions. Air quality experts say the best way to protect yourself from this fine particulate matter is to seek cleaner air inside. And unfortunately, most COVID-style masks won't do much to protect the wearer from wildfire smoke. Those monitoring the smoke concentrations say they are expected to improve in some areas and degrade in others as wildfire behaviour changes.
With winds directing smoke from a complex of wildfires burning southeast of Chilliwack and Hope, these fires continue to burn and will continue to bring smoke to the Fraser Valley.
We're being told that these smoky conditions will disperse with the arrival of coastal winds tomorrow. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
So we'll look at the Manitoba forecast now, and wow, you're telling me that those air quality advisories sure extend over quite a large area.
Yeah, very extensive. I have a map here to show you, and the shaded area that you're about to see is southern BC and southern Alberta, and then up near Prince George as well. So yes, a very wide, extensive area, not just through the Okanagan, but out toward the lower mainland and onto Vancouver Island. So we have some advisories here in Manitoba. Not to do with poor air quality, more to do with frost. So yes, frost advisory tonight around Swan River and surrounding regions. Even south of this area, we will likely see temperatures down around 2 or 3 degrees, areas like Wasagaming and Dauphin. So you might want to just to be careful, cover the plants outside if you have some flowers or tomatoes in the garden, that sort of thing. 25 now at the airport and at the Forks, still 27 in Steinbach. Carmen, as I mentioned earlier, was the hot spot today at 31 or just over 31. We're already into the low 20s around Brandon, Dauphin, Swan River, still 28 though in Melita. and pretty nice temperatures back on the Ontario side of the border as well. Across the north, we're looking at 11 in Lynn Lake, 13 Thompson, just 9 in Churchill right now. Chance of a shower tonight in Churchill. The rest of the forecasts look like this. Pretty quiet weather, actually, especially out to the east. Just 6 in Red Lake. I think in Winnipeg here we'll be down around 7 by early morning. Not much of a chance of frost here. Will be a breezy evening in case you're running out the door with the kids tonight. We've got some breezy, windy conditions around Brandon. Most of that will abate after midnight, and with lows of 2 or 3. Dauphin, Swan River, you could say a risk of frost, but the advisory is not in the Dauphin area, certainly is in the Swan River area. And across the north, we'll see that risk of frost as well. Thompson getting down to 1 tonight, a chance of a shower, and a low of 4 in Churchill. And then tomorrow, nice recovery back to 11 degrees, 17s and 18s in the west. Sun cloud mix and 14 for Thompson. And pretty quiet weather through most of the day tomorrow. I think the west will start to see a little bit of cloud building on into the afternoon and evening, but our temperatures will certainly be cooler tomorrow than they were today by about 10 degrees. So we're looking at 18 tomorrow in Winnipeg, 19 in Emerson, 18 in Steinbach, and 18s out toward the White Shell and up through Lac du Bonnet and Pinawa. Now, it's a mainly sunny sky in northwestern Ontario tomorrow, and your winds will just be what I describe as breezy, 20 to 30 kilometers per hour, 17 tomorrow in Kenora, all the way to 19 in Fort Francis. I'll have your 7-day forecast shortly.
Thanks, John.
You bet.